Well, Laura, welcome to the show. It is such an honor to have you join us and to be a part of the Awesome Marriage Podcast today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Kim. This is an honor to be here.
Well, it's just so much fun. It was great talking to you before we went live, and just your heart for couples and marriage and ministry. And we have a kindred spirit there for sure.
For sure.
So let's jump right in. You say that control and intimacy are opposites. You can only ever have one or the other. Why is that?
Well, I learned this the hard way by trying to improve my husband. When I was first married, I just thought he was the most handsome, smart, talented, funny guy. And then a few years in, I thought, well, I'm going to just help him improve a little bit. I'm going to help him be more ambitious and more tidy and also more romantic. I think he could improve there. So I was giving him all these helpful suggestions. And I did not understand why all of a sudden he didn't want to have much to do with me. He was very distant. He was watching a lot of TV, and I felt like he would rather watch a rerun than spend time with me, or even the bedroom. He just didn't seem very interested, and it was really heartbreaking. And but I thought, well, I know what I should do, because everyone knows if you, we were fighting a lot too. So
Sure.
I thought, everyone knows if you can't have a conversation without having a fight, then the thing to do is go to marriage counseling. And I thought, I'm just going to bring him to marriage counseling, and then the counselor will fix him, and then I can finally be happy, because I'm pretty sure that's how it works, right, Dr. Phil?
Exactly.
So, well, it didn't work, as you can imagine. And I remember I was even on the counselor's gray couch when I realized that my marriage was hopeless, because we were too far apart and he was never going to change. And I thought, I'm either going to spend the rest of my life in a loveless relationship, or else I have to get divorced. So I decided that I would end my marriage. There was just one problem, though, and that is that I was too embarrassed. I was too proud to get divorced, because people had been to the wedding just not that many years before. And I thought, well, as a last-ditch effort, I'm going to ask women who have had really long marriages of 15 years or more, because I've been married a few years.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask them for their secrets. And they told me things that didn't make any sense to me at all. But I thought, well, I'm just that desperate. I'm going to experiment with some of these suggestions. And if they worked, I kept them. And if they didn't, I threw them out. And I remember I hadn't been doing them for that long, these little experiments, not even that long. And I just remember I walked through the door one time at the end of the workday, and my husband's face lit up. He was happy to see me again. And that had been gone. So I thought, oh, something's working. It was very exciting. And I felt a lot of hope that had been missing for a long time, that I could now have that kind of marriage that I had dreamed of having when I was a little girl. Now I knew what to do, all these crazy things, that these wise women had told me. And and I thought, well, now we're not going to have those big fights in the car anymore. So this is really great and exciting. And then I remember just not very long after that, we were in the car and we had one of those big fights.
Sure.
Big blow up fight. Horrible. I was saying horrible things that I knew I was going to regret later. He was saying horrible things. And so I thought, well, that didn't work. And I had this idea. I thought, well, I know what to do, but I can't get myself to do it. And I thought, well, if I could, I'm going to get some friends who are also complaining about their marriages, and we're going to all do this together. And that is exactly what I did. I started a little support group in my living room, and there were 5 of us. And I would say, okay, try this or say this. And we were experiencing miracles. They were having miracles. And it finally gave me the accountability that I needed, like the supervision and the encouragement to do the new stuff. The new stuff wasn't hard. It was just different. It was just new compared to what I was used to and what I'd seen growing up. My parents are divorced, so I was following a failed recipe, just doing what I'd seen my mom do. And so they were having miracles, and somebody said, can you write down what we're doing for my cousin in Florida, because we're in California? And I said, sure, I can do that. And that ended up being my first book, where I wrote down what I call the 6 intimacy skills now that we learned. And that book became a New York Times bestseller, was published in 19 languages in 30 countries. And has accidentally started a worldwide movement. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary of empowering women to be ridiculously happy wives.
Wow.
And all of it because I just didn't want to get divorced. I was just too embarrassed to get divorced.
That's so interesting. Was there would you have been like what was the stigma there? What was made it where it was just
Well, total loss of status, right? You're not
mm,
supposed to get divorced. It's shameful.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if I'm honest, yeah, it was embarrassment.
yeah,
And having well, also, I have to say, I mean, in some ways, my parents' divorce, it was a very, very brutal divorce. Um, and of course, I was raised in a Christian home. Uh,
sure.
but it didn't stop them, right? And so I think part of me, so when I got married, of course, I said, well, that's never going to happen to me.
Right.
And then, of course, there I was. So I think I had a lot of motivation also to avoid the wreckage that I'd seen in their
Oh, that's
situation.
I think it's just interesting how God uses some of these constraints to get us to stay in, to do something like that, and I think it can vary, but I think for Nancy and I, it would have been exactly what there had not been divorce in our family on either side, and so when at the time when we really struggled, and that was something we kinda had on the table or were talking about, it was like neither one of us wanted to be the first to be divorced on either side, and neither one of us wanted to be the one to call our parents and say, "We're getting divorced," and so we figured out we got to stay in there. So I think God used that in a
Yeah,
way to keep us doing what we needed to do to get over that difficult time.
that's right. And I think of it as the wisdom of no escape now. I'm so glad that I felt so stuck because if I hadn't, I was never going to go through the door that was marked examine Laura's spirituality and her
Right.
characteristics unless I was in this bind that I found myself. And that's
Sure.
actually what ended up happening, right? Was I ended up becoming my best self. I ended up developing myself by trying to save my marriage through that
Yeah.
desperation.
That's so cool. So if somebody's listening and they're thinking, well, maybe I am trying to control my spouse, or maybe I'm micromanaging. What are some indicators that they can look for to see if they're falling into that category?
Well, absolutely. And I know for me, it just seemed like my husband was just so distant and he was so uncaring. And it's tricky because I was brought up knowing wives respect your husband and husbands love your wives, right? I
Yeah.
knew I was supposed to be a helpmate, but I was too helpful. And I think it's kind of a great question to ask yourself as a wife. Am I too helpful? Because what I didn't realize was that when I was trying to help him eat healthier, I was trying to help him with his resume. I was going to, I thought I could make his life better and easier, but helpful in wife language is actually critical in husband
Mhm.
language. And I know that now. But even now, as I say it to you, I feel like my female brain's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I was coming from a good place. I'm trying to be generous.
Sure.
But really, in some ways, that control, me saying, let me help you with your resume because you need a better job because you need to make more money, right? It was kind of my message, unfortunately. And so it was entirely disrespectful. It's like, you're not really that competent. You're not really capable to do this yourself. And so of course, that was hurtful for him.
Mhm.
I didn't realize, he seems like a big, strong man on the outside, and even on the inside sometimes. So I didn't realize how much that criticism was hurting his self-esteem, even. And so avoiding me was preferable to him, like defending himself and causing a fight for my husband, who's a pretty laid-back guy. So I just know for me, if the symptoms that I've seen for my own marriage, and certainly with we've helped tens of thousands of women now fix their marriages, make them last and thrive. And what we consistently see are depressed husbands,
Mm.
very distant husbands, workaholic husbands. Those are a pretty good sign that it might be time to check and say, am I too helpful? Is that maybe veering into control? Because all control is based in fear. If I'm not
Sure.
afraid, I don't have to tell him, hey, don't get on the freeway because it's rush hour. If I'm not afraid, I'm going to sit in traffic, right? Or if I'm not afraid he's going to overpay for something, I don't have to say, hey, don't forget to bring that coupon to the store, right? Which, he doesn't want to do. And so a lot of these things, I didn't realize I was chipping away at the intimacy in my own marriage by thinking I was coming from a spirit of generosity.
No, and I think so many women fall into that. They want to be helpful. I don't think it's like they want to do something negative. And I think as guys, we don't want to let people know how fragile our egos can be, but they are. And so we're not going to tell you that. We're just going to, like your husband did, you're going to withdraw or you're going to be a little distant because you don't want to hear that. I've had so many guys in counseling said, I don't need another mother. And that's kind of where they felt like their wife was coming from,
That's right.
and talking to women, I know that the intent starting out was not to do that. They did not want to wound their husband. They didn't want to do those things to him. But I think that's just some of the difference male female that you alluded to that we don't understand. And so you're trying to help, and he's thinking, "Get away from me, lady." I had a mom. I got out of that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now I don't want another one. And so I think that happens a lot. And so I think a lot of it is just the way we look at it. And I think most guys don't know how to address it other than probably anger or withdrawal when that happens, and neither one of those works.
That's right. Yeah, and I am so guilty of what you just described, Dr. Kim. I was like his mother, and I think that is very common, unfortunately, and especially I think as you get into motherhood too, right? And then we joke about it. We'll say, "Oh, I have 3 children. One of them's 34," and
Yeah.
that is also incredibly disrespectful. I had no concept of just how disrespectful that was. So yeah, it's a really good point that you
No,
made.
I think that does happen, and I think, yeah, because I think too as a mom and your kids are doing pretty good. I'm doing a good job raising these kids. Why
Yeah.
why won't he let me raise him, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, right, or why won't he let me tell him how to raise them is kind of kind
yes.
of another one that we see. And of course, mothers have no we women can't know how to be fathers, right? God gave you a mother and a father
Yeah.
for a
It
reason. So they're doing something special that you can't provide, but it doesn't seem quite right to our brains.
No,
So,
and we yeah, it's learning to value that in each other and learn to value differences, all those things that we talk about a lot, but it takes something to get us there, to
yeah,
make us really aware of what's going on. So what
yeah,
can a spouse do if they feel controlled or they feel micromanaged, besides the negative things we've talked about, besides
yeah.
getting angry, besides withdrawing?
That's right. That's right. So it is. So first of all, it's very painful, and I think I think it's something that women. I know for me, I didn't realize just how much hurt my husband was experiencing when I was micromanaging him, and it does. Um, so this is where I kind of I certainly have a bias about how God made men and women differently. And it does seem to be that it's very often the wife that is the one who's controlling. And I believe we are also the keepers of the relationship. So we're more likely to fall into that. So I think it's just a great question to ask yourself, because I think fish are the last ones to know that they're in the ocean. I
Hmm.
never thought I was controlling, just thought I was being helpful. Right. So, but if your husband is telling you how to cut an onion, or you're not parenting the children right, or you're wasting money or something like that, it's very frustrating. And usually there's an indication that something else is missing in the relationship. And typically it is, we see the gratitude skill being really incredibly powerful in that regard. So like I remember one student, Isabella, uh, so we gave the assignment for that week of the workshop that she would give her husband 3 gratitudes a day.
Hmm.
And so Isabel was not very happy about this assignment. She said, well, first of all, I do everything around there and no one's thanking me. So I don't see why I should be thanking him. I don't even know
Of
what I'm to thank
course.
him for. Right. And
Right.
but she felt like he was controlling as well. And so she decided she was going to just do this, I think, just to shut me up, probably. And so she went, and the first day she thanked him for working hard to support the family, even though she worked also. And then she thanked him for taking out the trash, and he watched the baby so she could go exercise. So she thanked him for that. And then by the second day, they were sitting down to dinner, and Isabella was very surprised when her husband turned to her and said, you've really taught me that we need to appreciate each other more. So I want to thank you for making dinner tonight. So she
Wow.
nearly fell out of her chair, right? She changed the whole culture of her family in just a couple of days by being very intentional with 3 gratitudes a day. So it can be really exciting to experiment with that.
Well, I think it is, and I think I've been doing quite a bit of some writing and talking about lately about just reframing our spouse and how it kind of fits into that. We think of our spouse in a negative way, and gratitude is such a way to begin, I think, to change that. I remember James Dobson's group did something. This probably been 15 years ago, at least, and they were talking with parents with troubled teens, and they said, praise your child. Say one thing of praise to your child every day. And after 90 days, every parent in that group said, things are different at home. And there's
Wow.
just something I think that God has put within us that we respond to that. And it makes a difference. And it makes a difference the way we look at ourselves and the person that's saying those things.
Absolutely. Really does.
That to get instant results like she did, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we see that a lot. It's pretty magical.
Well, and I think it shows what I see sometimes. Couples just get stuck and they don't know what to do. And when someone does something different that's positive for the marriage, I think so many times the other person responds.
Oh, absolutely.
As husbands, a lot of times we have no clue what to do. And so, we've got to get good counsel from someone that has a good marriage, or we've got to go to counseling, or we've got to respond to what our spouses do.
Yeah, I
And
sure love, hearing from couples that have what you want, right? I think that is so powerful. And that
Mhm.
was a big deal for me because we'd been to a counselor and for some reason, it didn't. I think I wasn't very open at the time, to be totally honest. I remember the
Yeah.
counselor saying at one point, she said, like, I don't know if you realize you're kind of controlling. And I just remember the record scratch, like, like, wait a minute.
It's like we're not talking to you anymore.
So, but it just wasn't working. So it really can be so nice to hear the wisdom of the person who's been where you want to go, like a Sherpa who's helping you climb Mount Everest in a way.
Absolutely. I think anytime we can have a strong, faith-filled mentor, it makes such a difference. It has for me. It has for Nancy. She started that out even before we got married. She had a lady that she met with while we were engaged. I didn't even know they were meeting, but she poured so much into Nancy that benefited our marriage, and especially the first couple of years of our marriage. Because we were young and we didn't have a clue what we were doing. 20 years
what?
old, it's like.
I love that. And that says a lot because, and you've been married 52
years now. Yeah.
years. Yeah, I give Nancy all the credit for that, actually.
Absolutely. I do too.
But
Absolutely. I'm never going to argue with that, Laura.
She started before you were married, and she got lessons in how to be married, which I just love because I feel
And
like
she would always find if we were struggling or just in different times, she would find someone older and wiser in the church. She'd just corner them and say, I need to have coffee with you. And that has benefited our marriage so much.
wow,
It's
I
good.
love that. I think
Yeah.
that's good. So wise.
So how do we navigate the tension between letting go of those controlling tendencies and still speak up about the things that matter to us? Because I think that's a difficult thing.
Oh, it is. It really is. And I think you can't underestimate the terror that can come up when you're trying to relinquish control because
Yes.
it really is based in fear, right? So one of the stories I love from our campus is Kathy Murray, who she was in her second marriage. She had a blended family, and she was a very successful CFO at work. And she was using the same things that had made her successful at work in her marriage, and her marriage was in big trouble. So she was great at managing the money, and she was trying to help her husband, manage the money better. And so she read my first book when it came out, and then she got this glimpse of like, oh, maybe I'm part of the problem. She'd really been thinking he's the problem, he's the issue. And they'd been sleeping in separate beds for 6 months. So she decided she was going to experiment with just letting go of her controlling tendencies by using I call them cheat phrases. I give them little cheat phrases to use. So he came in and said, I need you to tell me what you want me to do with the cell phone plan, because she trained him that way, right? That he needed to get her, to advise him so she wouldn't get mad at him later. And so she used the little cheat phrase. She said, oh, Doug, whatever you think. And he looked at her funny, like, no, I'm not gonna fall for that. I know how this works. And then he said, no, I really need you to tell me. And she said, she just repeated it. She said, whatever you think. And then she said, I trust you. So,
Wow.
and he went away and made the decision about the cell phone plan. And see, he had known that she didn't really think he was capable of making a good decision by himself.
Yeah.
That's why he had to ask, right?
Sure.
And so she was kind of afraid that he was going to screw it up, but he didn't. He did fine. And then he came over to her that night. He put his hand on her shoulder and he said, you are so nice today. And
Wow.
tears just ran down her cheeks. And they slept in the same bed that very night. And she'd been going to counseling every week. Also, she'd been going for an hour a week by herself to complain about Doug. And nobody ever got happier that way, right? By complaining
No.
about your spouse for an hour a week. So she ended up firing the counselor and just throwing herself into the intimacy skills. Well, that was 20 years ago. And she still gets tears in her eyes when she talks about what a tragedy it would have been to divorce her second husband, who is now the love of her life. She just speaks so highly, such glowing terms about her husband and her marriage, just because she didn't know how to relinquish that inappropriate control, right? So, but just because you're saying whatever you think, it makes it feel like you're going to start agreeing with a lot of things that you don't agree with necessarily. And as a wife, you still need to have your voice. And so this was another training that just was totally lost on me. In fact, I remember we were a fairly new couple when my husband took us on a romantic getaway to Hawaii. I was really excited because I thought on the first day we're going to go to the beach. But instead of saying that, I said, what do you want to do? And because I wanted to be, I didn't want to have conflict. I wanted to think about him, not be selfish, right? I was trying not to be selfish. What do you want to do? And he said, well, he goes, I think we should go see a volcano. I was like, a volcano. But I wanted to make nice. So I just said, okay, great. Let's go see a volcano. And so we get in the rental car, and we're driving around. You don't see a volcano for a long time. There's just little molten rocks on the side of the road. And I started to think, this is what a waste of time. And I started to kind of fume, and he could tell something was wrong. So he said, is there everything all right? And I said, did you think this would be fun? Because I don't think it's fun at all. I think it's really stupid. And I wanted to go to the beach, but you didn't even ask me what I wanted to do. So he saw a volcano. All right.
Yeah.
But it was intending, right? So I feel sad when I think about that earlier version of me who just did not know how to express her desires, just had no concept. I mean, do you know what he did after that? Even after I behaved so badly, he took me to the beach.
Wow.
We never got to the volcano. He just wanted me to be happy. So it's very interesting to now know the formula to say what I want.
Yeah.
I think before I used to think I was saying what I wanted, and really I'd say something like, John, this kitchen is a disaster. I thought he was going to jump up off the couch and start doing the dishes. Well, that never happened.
No.
And it's because he didn't know how to make me happy, because I was just complaining. I wasn't telling him what I wanted. So finally I learned, I remember one day I said, John, I would love a clean kitchen. And he said, all right, I'll do the dishes. And he did. That was 20 years ago. He's been doing them ever since. I never do the dishes. He knows it makes his wife happy when he does the dishes. So he wants to be my hero. And that's how you trigger his hero gene, is by expressing a desire, not a complaint, but expressing that desire in a way that inspires. So I have a little cheat phrase for that as well.
Well, it's so true. We want to please our wives. We want to do things to make them feel loved and cared for, and respond to us with a smile and all those kind of things, the hug and all those kind of things. So yeah, that's a great example. And I'm thinking as we're talking, how many couples I've seen over the years who just give up. And I think what your story, with the lady you told the story about, if we can persevere through that, if we can reach out and get resources like what you have, and learn that there are some answers that we don't have, and make that marriage work, you never regret it. I mean, that too many people continue to think, well, I married the wrong person again and again, and it's not. It's, you got to look at yourself. What does God want me to do?
Yes.
And then when we do that and we change, most of the time our spouse is going to respond.
Yeah, it's really true.
Yeah. And so that's great. What about a spouse that is passive and seems to want to be told what to do or how to do things, which I think happens?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I certainly thought that my husband was incredibly passive. I used to say, oh, he's just so laid back. And he, I think he might be in a coma. I used to joke about it. It wasn't so. And then it was really interesting when I got out of the space a little bit, right? Because I was meddling and everything. Like I remember one of the things was I decided it was too stressful for me to manage our finances. I was always looking at where we could save and how we needed to save more, and he shouldn't spend that or whatever. And I remember just relinquishing control of the finances to my husband. And so at first he was scared, just kind of like Kathy's husband, Doug, like, wait a minute, you think I can do this? I was like, yeah. And so, and all of a sudden, he just became this generous guy, and also so much more generous, it seemed like to me. Also, around that time, he started his own company. He'd always had jobs for other people, but then all of a sudden he had all this initiative, started his own company. It was very successful, more successful than he'd been at his jobs. He liked it more. So it's just really interesting to see that initiative come out. But it's not just me. I had a student that I just interviewed recently who came because she was the main breadwinner in their house. And she just felt so resentful because her husband would lose his job pretty regularly. I guess once a year or every couple of years, he'd lose his job and go for months without having one. And she was having to provide for them. And she just felt so resentful about that. And so she came and she was studying on our campus, and she's like, well, how do I get him to contribute more? He doesn't even have a job. And so we showed her the power of a spouse fulfilling prophecy. And a spouse fulfilling prophecy is where you, instead of focusing on the experience that you're having that you don't want, it's a gratitude exercise, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
You start to count your blessings instead of your curses. So spouse fulfilling prophecy she came up with is, so the one that she had that was negative was he doesn't provide. So she decided to start saying, you're a great provider. You're a good provider. And the way she said it to him one time, and he was like, what do you mean? He'd lost his job again. And she said, you're a good provider. He goes, what do you mean? I'm not even making any money. And she goes, well, you clean the pool. You always open the car door for me. And she had this long list of ways that he was providing for her. And he goes, yes, yeah, that's true. And so he could see in his wife mirror, she thinks I'm a good provider. Well, wouldn't you know it? So I'm interviewing her maybe a year after she started doing this. And now she says he provides about 80 to 90% of everything. He came up with this idea, oh, hey, why don't we get a boat? And she's like, a boat, And but he's making more money now. And so then he'll say, yeah, let's go out on the boat tonight and watch the sunset. So she feels very taken care of and provided for. And it's all from this change of focus, right? So you can focus on, and I think of all the women too. One of the things that comes up a lot is, well, he's not leading the way. He's supposed to be the leader, and I just don't see him leading. And I remember one woman, she said, I'm doing everything, and he's just sitting on the couch. And we've talked about how, that actually might be a form of leadership, because we think, well, things need to be done. Everything's got to be done. Sure. And then he's showing something different. He's showing relaxing on the couch. It's time to relax right now. And so I was like, what if you considered that his way of leading, and you followed his lead and said, gosh, I also could use some time to rejuvenate myself. So she would see him sitting on the couch, and she'd start to feel that resentment. And she's like, you know what? It must be time to relax. And she'd even say to him, she's like, oh, I am so excited to just relax right now. She's like, I know the dishes, the kitchen's messy or whatever. The kids need lunches for tomorrow, but I love that it's just time to relax right now. And then he would take the initiative. He'd say, oh, do you want me to make those lunches? I'll make the lunches for the kids tomorrow. And he'd step right into taking the lead in a way that, she had only envisioned it. Nagged him. That never worked.
That is so good. It's just those little changes that can make such a difference. And I love how I think when we talk about difference, usually they either pull us apart or pull us together. So we can start looking, what I hear you saying, if we can look at these differences in a positive way, that sitting on the couch really can be leadership and embrace that. That's pretty cool.
It is, especially, one of the things that I learned from those wise women all those years ago was that the very first step to improving my marriage was to make myself happy. That I wasn't exhibiting a spirit of joy. I had a spirit of misery.
Mm,
And so and this is common with a lot of my students, that they come overburdened, overwhelmed, resentful. And so that first, only happy people have happy marriages. So this is
mm.
really key for us to start to do that.
That's so good. It's so good. Makes such a difference. Just the way we look at things makes such a difference.
It does. It
That's
really
great.
does.
So have you seen marriages change when the controlling partner starts to let go of the control?
So much. It's like night and day. It's so interesting. I had a student recently where um, their marriage was really in big trouble. They had a daughter, and the husband was had another woman, and
Mm,
there's this affair going on. He's saying he wants to leave. He wants a divorce, and so she showed up with a lot of desperation to our campus, saying,
sure.
like, I think this is probably hopeless because he says it's over. He wants to leave, and I'm not sure what to do. But she was willing to just try the experiments, right? Try the suggestions. Here's what you do to make yourself happy. Here's how you be more respectful. Here's the cheap phrases that we use. Here's how you be more grateful. Here's how you be more vulnerable. All the 6 intimacy skills. And so it's really interesting because so they were at one part, they were kind of going back and forth, like, what do you want to do? Should we get divorced? He said, what do you think? But as she was using the skills, he was coming closer. And we heard less about the other woman. And he said to her at one point, what do you think we should do? Do you think we should get divorced? And she said, I would love to stay married. I am standing for our marriage. That's a big thing that we do at the campus, is like, no matter how hopeless, and the whole community is standing for your marriage as well, no matter what. Even though she had this other woman in the situation, she really saw a possibility to heal her family. And so that mustard seed of faith, right? We just wanted to grab
Yeah.
onto that and grow it. And he said, well, I think we should get divorced. So it was just incredibly hurtful. But she decided to use one of the cheat phrases that we teach for respect. Same one. It fit right in there. She said, whatever you think, I respect your decision on that, right? Total ultimate respect. Even though this was heartbreaking, she was crushed.
Sure.
And as soon as she left that conversation, she came back to us and just was crying her eyes out.
Oh, sure.
Super upset. But I was talking to her because I was interviewing her for my podcast, because she was saying, well, that was 7 months ago, and now we're back together. He has come back. There's no other woman anymore, and our marriage is better than it ever was. And she said, and now we're expecting our second child. That was a dream.
Wow.
So, and this was all from her letting go of control, right? Because I think when you're afraid and somebody's saying, well, do you think we should get divorced? It's like, no, please don't. Reconsider. You've got to think what you're throwing away, right? Try to reason with them.
Right.
Try to control that outcome. But here it was the ultimate, her dream was to stay married. But instead of trying to control, she actually showed how much she respected her husband. And that created the opportunity for him to just do the right thing, come back to his wife. And
That's so good. Yeah, I just thinking from a guy's point of view, I think so. I think usually that she reacted very different than he probably thought she would.
She did.
And God used that to change his heart.
Soften his heart. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No question about it. So it's
That's
powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
So inspiring,
those are probably, and that the toughest when there is a third person involved are very difficult situations. And I think our tendency is to beg and grovel or whatever, which in the big picture is pretty demeaning for a woman if it is the wife in the situation to do, as opposed to say, if you're going to make that choice, I don't want that, but I respect your choice. That's powerful.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he just totally reversed himself.
Yeah, very good. So when a partner, what do you see in them, changes in them when they start letting go of control? Because I've got a lady that keeps coming to my mind, and I love this lady, and I've worked with her off and on for a couple of years, and she's not greatly consistent in counseling, but her letting go of control is like she holds on to it more than anyone I've ever seen. So how do you see a person change when they begin to let go of that control?
I just think of my own journey, Dr. Kim, of being somebody who I was so afraid so much at the time that I used to rage. I raged at my husband. I raged at, everybody's, my siblings, hapless bank clerks and salespeople. And so there wasn't much dignity. I lost my dignity a lot in that way of life. So it was very painful. And I didn't know how to stop. And I knew that by acting that way, I was actually driving people further away, right? I knew my husband might eventually leave. He was so distant already. And so I thought, no one's going to want to be with me after I act like this. So it was really, it's just a very painful, hurtful way to live. And so I think one of the changes that we see in women that is so remarkable. There was another student I interviewed and her husband still has this other woman, and she had spent, I guess, not this last New Year's Eve, but the previous one. She thought they had plans, and he was going to come back and to the house, and they were going to do anyway. And he just ended up blowing her off. She was sitting on New Year's Eve she had a package of fireworks and nobody there to celebrate with, and he just blew her off. And then then there's this other woman, and she's been on the campus doing this work. And so she was describing this last New Year's Eve. There was no other woman, he wasn't sitting there texting her on the couch.
Yeah.
Like had the experience in previous times. And so she still had the fireworks, and her husband was there, and they got him out, and they were standing on the street, at midnight yelling Happy New Year. And he gave her a passionate kiss right, in front of God and everybody, and said, "I love you, and I've always loved you." And she was telling us this story. He has not moved back in yet. And she actually doesn't know the status totally of the other woman. And but she was smiling ear to ear. And she says, my miracle's on its way. I know that it is. I have faith that that's what's happening, right? And so this is part of what we do on the campus, is the practice of choosing our faith over our again and again and again, right? The fear might come up, but the faith, choosing that faith is just a powerful thing. So it was just so interesting to be interviewing her and seeing her big smile across her face, and knowing this woman had been falling apart, a year before. But she was confident. She was dignified. She was happy. So how does it change you to relinquish control? You become your best self. It's really a phenomenal thing to witness.
And at some point, I think we realize we really don't have control over anybody but ourselves anyway. No matter how great we think we can control things. And I love that story, because it's a story in progress. A couple of things we've talked about, and I think God works both ways. It's make the comment, and the guy says something good right then, and things start getting better. And sometimes it's a process. But I think once you let go, I think God can work on you in a way that he can't when we're holding on to control. Does that make sense?
Exactly right. Yeah, I think fear is the devil, honestly.
Absolutely. 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 That's so good. Great stories. So let's go to you and John. You guys have been married, did you say 34 years?
32. We celebrated
32 years. What are you loving about your marriage today?
Well, I mean, no marriage is perfect, right? Not even mine. But I was thinking about, from this question, no one was going to answer this question. I was thinking about coming face to face with myself as a little girl, and the promises I made. I get choked up because it's
okay.
It feels so good to feel loved every single day.
Wow.
And yesterday I was making breakfast, and I was doing a little dance, and my husband had to stop what he was doing to videotape me. He's like, "You're just so cute," and that just, like, I'm the supermodel, right? That he's been married to for 32 years. It gives you so much inner strength.
Yes.
I loved every single day. But I think another piece that came to mind as I was reflecting on this is, I remember being in angel choir as a little girl, and we did a musical on the fruits of the Spirit. And I was gentleness. I was gentleness in this. And I remember, so that I have a little song about gentleness, and it kind of always stuck with me. And I knew in my heart that I was not gentle in my marriage. I was harsh.
Mm.
And so one of the things that I'm loving about my marriage is how it's helped me develop those fruits of the Spirit. You know, I am more patient now. I am more gentle now than I used to be. And I just didn't ever see how that was going to be possible. And so I just have tremendous gratitude. I can't believe I'm falling apart so much here.
You're fine.
It really is, you know, from going from thinking I had to end my marriage
Yeah.
to the joy that I have now. Yeah, it's unspeakably wonderful. I'm very grateful.
That's so powerful. You know, that Nancy and I talk about the fruits of the Spirit a lot and asking God to build different ones into us. And I think, you know, we've been married 52 years and we're still a work in progress. And I think, and I don't want to ever think we arrived. I guess I want us to continue to grow and learn. And I think as long as God leaves us both here, He has something for us to learn and grow and to be better. And hopefully we're able then to help pass that on to other people at some point. So I love that, and I think it is a work in progress. Nancy said something similar to me not too long ago. Like we were talking about, yeah, I asked her, I don't know, asking you, what did you dream your husband to be like? And she said, what we have today. I said, not what we had early. Right. No, what we have today. And I said, okay, that's good. That's good. So,
It is.
and I think it's staying in, it's working, it's trusting God, it's having faith, letting Him work, and like we talked today, letting go of control and just being who God created you to be. That's all you can do.
Yeah, it really is all you can do, but it's
Powerful.
the gift of being married, right? And having that mirroring all the time, right? I just feel like I have so much power to set the culture in my marriage. And then my husband kind of reflects back to me, you know, this is how you're showing up. Because I still have to apologize for being disrespectful, you know, from time to time. I haven't done it in the last couple of days, but probably in the last 2 weeks I have. You know, I'll see him. I remember one time I was definitely being controlling about what time he set the alarm for. And because you could say, well, that affects me, right? Because I would wake up too. But
Sure.
anyway, he wanted to wake up early. And then I remember one time he was walking down the hall and I said, so what time are you going to set the alarm for tomorrow? And he just kept walking. He just didn't respond. And it was mirroring, right? It was a good indication like, oh, you know what? I think I've been disrespectful. Man, decide what time he wants to wake up, right? So it's grown man. So yeah, so I'll still have those opportunities to say, I apologize for being disrespectful when I tried to control when you set the alarm,
You know,
for example.
but when we do those things and when we take responsibility and we ask for forgiveness or say we're sorry, it connects you. It connects you.
It
John
does.
had to be, yeah, it's like that. Okay, then everything just kind of melts that was there, and oh yeah, there's my wife again. Yeah.
Yeah, you did a podcast on emotional intimacy recently, and that is exactly what I thought of was that moment of vulnerability, because it is vulnerable to apologize, speak out.
Absolutely.
And it just creates incredible emotional safety, which leads to that emotional intimacy that I wouldn't want to live without.
That we all want. We want our marriages. This, Laura, has been so much fun. It's great to get to spend time with you and love what you do. And my gosh, millions probably of women that you've touched and helped. It's awesome. If people want to connect with you, where are the best places to find you?
Well, we have something fun right now going on. We have the free Adored Wife roadmap, which is you can get it at lauradoyle.org. So just go to lauradoyle.org and get that free Adored Wife roadmap. Or you can listen to my podcast as well, the Empowered Wife podcast, on iTunes and Spotify and lots of places, wherever podcasts are.
And we'll tag all those things in the notes so that people can do that and find you. Thank you for your heart for marriage and ministry, and most of all for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. It's really been a joy.
Thank you.